Hello again. So I just finished making the Calvin cycle video, and I mentioned in the Calvin cycle video that I wanted to make a separate video about glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P. This particular molecule is a 3-carbon molecule, and it's not just found in the Calvin cycle. It is also found in glycolysis. So that's why I kind of wanted to take a moment to go over it. You don't necessarily need to know the structure of G3P, but you just going over why it's called G3P, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, will hopefully help you remember it a little bit better. So one thing that I wanted to start with, this isn't G3P, but this is glycerol. We saw glycerol before when we talked about phospholipids, also when we talked about triglycerides. So both of those utilize glycerol when they're synthesizing the molecule. But glycerol, if it ends in an -ol, that basically means that it is an alcohol molecule, and alcohols have hydroxyl groups. So a hydroxyl group. Now, if we wanted to take glycerol and make it glyceraldehyde, we have to change one of the functional groups, or one of these carbons. So let's imagine we still had our 3 carbons. Each carbon, if you recall, makes 4 total bonds. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this carbon has a double bond to an oxygen and a single bond to a hydrogen. This is different than a carboxyl group, which would have a double bond oxygen and then a single bond OH. So this isn't a carboxyl group or carboxylic acid, but rather this is an aldehyde. And then the rest we'll keep the same for now. We'll say this is hydrogen, this is hydrogen, this is our OH, our hydroxyl, and we'll put the hydroxyl over here, which will make sense in just a second. So basically, we went from glycerol to glyceraldehyde by changing this one alcohol group, this one hydroxyl group, and turning it into an aldehyde. Now, to make this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, we have to take this carbon right here, so this is the first carbon, second carbon, third carbon. Instead of this, we will put a phosphate group. So it will be a P double bond O. This can be an OH or an O minus, and this is also an OH, or it could also be an O minus, depending on if this hydrogen has been donated or not. So this here is a phosphate group. Phosphate group. So this whole thing is glyceraldehyde, aldehyde, 3-phosphate, or more commonly known as G3P. So this is the glyceraldehyde, glyceraldehyde, and on the third carbon we have a phosphate. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, you don't need to know this chemical structure for the AP exam, but hopefully going over it helps you remember it a little bit better. And again, note that G3P is used both in the Calvin cycle as well as glycolysis. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email.